Hi everyone, I'm Leah and this is my video on how to make these recycled fairies. If you're on Instagram, I think this video is going to end up being too long and I'm going to have to put it onto YouTube. So if you're looking for this video, the completed full-length video, it will be on YouTube and I'm on there as Leah Wild Creative. So there's no H, it's just L-E-A, Leah Wild Creative. So I'm going to start by showing you some of the fairies that I've got at the moment, and I'll just show you some details on this one. Here we go. There she is. So she's made from wire. This is recycled old garden wire I've used for these, and then all the clothes are made from scrap fabrics, or recycled stuff, and then little bits of yarn ends from crochet projects, and there's a little bit of sequin stuff there from a charity shop. I always look in charity shops for like haberdashery and interesting bits and bobs. She's got a little sequin there, and she's holding a little bell, a little charm. She's also got bells for her feet. And this one she hasn't got bells for her hands, but some of them I put bells or beads for their hands. The wings are just made out of wire as well, and I haven't got any at the moment where I've done the inside of the wings, but I've done lots in the past where I've cut out some recycled plastic and then used some marker pens or fine liners or paint or something like that to put some nice colour on the wings, or sometimes I just do them completely clear, just recycled plastic bags, and for that I just cut it out and then glue it on, but I'll tell you about that after. The head here is a bead, that's also recycled, and then she's got a little flower which is also recycled. So this is just a little what do you call them, like fake flower, that I've taken off the plastic thing that it's attached to the stem, and then I've been able to stitch a sequin on top to hold it in place, and the hair is yarn ends. Okay, so there's a few others that I've made. This one's the biggest one I've got at the moment. Sorry, she's tangled with another one. Here we go. I'll just show you some of the details on there. So these are all recycled fabric scraps. And there's another one. She's got bells for hands, that one. Oh, and she's holding a little owl. This is a witchy one. And then some other ones I've done in the past, I've done really, really natural. So I've used, sometimes I use natural sheep locks, without the colours, so just in nice natural browns or cream colours like natural white, you know, and then use that for the hair, or some natural yarn that I've made or bought, and then done all the clothes in natural fabrics and recycle bits of natural fabrics and stuff. So and sometimes I've done ones that are mermaidy, so I've used really nice kind of shimmery mermaidy fabrics and put shells on them and stuff like that. So you can really get into the details of how you want to decorate your fairy. But first of all, I'll show you the framework that they're made from. So they're made from one complete piece of wire. So this is a piece of garden wire, and this is one with the hair attached and the bead attached, so you can see the framework of the body. For this one I've got beads for hands and buttons for feet. These are like little shank buttons that I've used for the feet. So it's whatever I've got lying around that's recyclable. And there's a bead for the head. Here's one that's been dressed with the base of the clothing without all the details on yet. I'll show you some different stages. So working with wire, first of all, these are the sharp ends that have been cut there. So first of all, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my pliers and I'm going to take just the end of the wire. Let's put that against my clothes so you can see it. There we go. I'm going to take just the very end of the wire in the pliers. I'm using jewellery pliers, but you can use bigger pliers. And I'm just taking the very end over, not too long, just a little bit, and then I'm going to squeeze that together. there. So I've squeezed that so that it's facing inwards towards the wire, and then I feel it. It's not really sharp. I can't feel any sharp bits on that anymore, so that just makes it safer for me to work with. I do these with my daughter, and yeah, I help her with the wire bit just to make sure that that doesn't go anywhere near her eyes. We do that bit together because they can move around a lot and fling towards your eyes and stuff like that, so I have to be really careful. Yeah, doing them with Elfie, I just make sure that I help her lots. When she was really little, I would do it for her and just give her the wire frame for her to decorate. So there, I've bent that one under as well. There, so it's just curled background. Okay, so this piece of wire, I'm using a bead this big, so that's about, ooh, it's just under an inch by the look of it. It's not quite an inch. So this piece of wire is, I'll just have a look and work it out roughly. Okay, it stretches pretty much from hand to hand. It's just a little bit shorter than hand to hand. So with my arms outstretched. So I take off about, yeah, 2 arms lengths right across from one hand to the other. Because this is going to get doubled in half, and it does use up quite a bit of wire. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get my hair, which is just made from yarn scraps. I do hand spinning, so I've got some nice hand spun yarn scraps in there as well. And then I've also got bits out of my yarn basket. Again, these are things that I have from charity shops or off eBay and things like that. I've got some sparkly yarn, that's like a ribbon yarn. And then there's some of my hand spun, it's got that in there. And yeah, so just a mixture. I like to put little textures in and stuff like that. I don't know what I did with my other bits. I'll show you. No, can't find them. But anyway, I'll get lots of different textures of yarn. So I'm going to get those in the middle and hold that tight, and then I'm going to find the center of the wire. So there we go, I've got it in half. This wire is this is recycled stuff, so I haven't bought it that it's got the measurement on or anything like that, but it looks about 1 millimeter thick. It might be just under, it might be like 0.8 or something like that. So with a thinner wire, I use the smaller size bead like that, and I make the body a bit smaller than I would for, say, something like this big one is made with thicker wire to support the body, because otherwise it would be too thin and flimsy to make a body that big out of thin wire. And then it's got a bigger bead for the head. So for this one, I'm going to get the center of the wire, and see what I mean about it flinging about, and then I'm going to get the yarn in half. So it's my little bunch of yarn. I'm going to grab it so that it's folded in half like that, and I'm going to hold that really, really tight. Okay, so now I'm going to get the pliers, I'm going to squeeze it together, and then I'm going to give it another squeeze with the pliers. Now I'm feeding down to the ends of the wire, so I've got that one up there. I'm just going to grab that between my knees, and then I'm going to get this bead and I'm going to thread those ends of the wire through the bead. So you'll have to check first that your the hole that's in your bead is big enough to take the wire with the ends bent back. So occasionally, most times they fit, but occasionally I have to drill a bit of a bigger hole through the bead, but most of the time they're fine. So I've pushed that right up to the top, and then that kind of wedges the hair right up to the top of the wire like that. Now it's going to slip back down while I'm making the body, but then when the fabrics are wrapped on, it's going to push the bead back up again and trap that hair nice and tight. So first thing I'm going to do, it now looks like that, and that moves about, and I'm going to get the wire and I'm going to hold this really tight, and then I'm going to be twisting that wire until it looks about the right length for the neck before the arms get made. So I'm going to hold that there. You can see why it's really important to bend those ends over and be really careful with your eyes, because it really does move around a lot. So now I'm going to pull one side of the wire out to the side, and I'm going to bend it at about the arm's length. Now I can measure this after and put it into the comments or put it into the description to say what the measurements are, just in case that's helpful to anyone, of, you know, the bead and the arms and the legs and the body and stuff like that. I just do it by looking at it and deciding kind of what's about the right length. So I've decided about the arm's length, and then I'm going to bend that back on itself so that the wire is coming out and then it's going to come back again, but I need to twist that together. So I'm going to keep these out of my way, and then I'm going to, if I can do it with my fingers I do. Sometimes I need the pliers, especially with thicker wire. I need the pliers to move that around. So I'm just twisting that to make an arm. There we go. Now if I had put a bead on there, I would have wanted to do that before I folded it in half. So I'll show you with the other one what I would have done, because I'm not putting any beads on this one for hands or bells or anything like that. So that's what it looks like now. It's got one arm, and then this is the other piece of wire that's ready to make the other arm. I do always just check that I have got the right piece of wire to work with, because now one of them's shorter than the other, and I don't want to make the other arm with the shorter piece because I'm going to run out of wire when I get to the legs. So I've got the right piece of wire. I'm going to bring it out. This time I'm going to measure it against the other one, and then this is where I would thread the bead on if I was going to put a bead or a bell on for the hand, and then fold it back in half. But I don't have one on this one, so now I'm going to twist that one. And because this wire is a bit thinner than the one that I use for the bigger ones, then I can do this with my fingers and it doesn't hurt. So now I've got two arms, and there's my two ends of wire. So what I'm going to do is I'm now going to get that wire, and I'm going to take the one over the top. It doesn't matter how you do it, just look at your fairy and just think, how does that need to wrap over? So it's just going to wrap back over the top like that across the front of the arms. And then with the other one I'm going to do the same. So I'm going to take it the other way, and I'm just going to wrap it across the other arm. Around the back and back down. So what I've done is I've took the wire out and back, and then looped it around and down just to hold it tighter, so that it holds where the ends are wrapped together, so it holds those together so that they don't pull apart when I work down the body. So now that's nice and tight. I'll just get that to focus. There we go, that's what it looks like. Okay, now I'm going to do the body. Oh no, sorry, now I'm going to do the wings while I'm there. So with one wire looks like it's wanting to go in one direction, the other wire looks like it's wanting to go in the other direction, which is the opposite to where it's come from. So the piece of wire coming from the left I'm going to take to the right, and the piece of wire coming from the right I'm going to take to the left, and that just helps again crossing it over. It's kind of like knotting it together in a way. So I'm going to take the wire out. This is old recycled wire, so it's a little bit crumpled. So I'm going to just stretch it, firm it with my finger to make it nice and smooth. And then when I just look at it and just do the wing, I don't know, like about, yeah, it's about the same length as the arms really. So I'm going to get, for this one, if you've got these kind of jewellery pliers, then you can just wrap it over the end. But if you've got round nose pliers, you can use those for this. Now you can just do the wing literally just like a loop like that, but I like to put a little bend in it like that to look a bit more wing like. So, and you can do really fancy wing, you know, you could do all shapes and stuff for the wings. So I'm going to take it out to about just before where the hand starts, and I'm going to grab it with the round nose pliers, and then I'm just going to bend that back on itself and give it a squeeze so that it looks like that. And then I'm just going to, with my finger, I'm just going to bend it down just so that the end has a little loopy bit on it, and then I'm just going to smooth that with my finger and thumb back round towards the arms like that. Then I'm going to wrap that over the opposite arm. So I'm working on its left arm at the moment, so I'm going to wrap that wire is coming towards the other side, so I'm going to wrap it over the right arm and back, and that's holding that wing in place. And then with the other wing, again, always making sure I'm not using the same wire to make all the wings, because I'm going to run out of wire for the legs if I do that. So I'm doing one side and then the other side. So now I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm going to just smooth it out up to about the same place. And then I'm going to bend that back on itself. Now you could use a measuring tape to measure if you want it to be exactly symmetrical. I just use my eyes to kind of get an idea of how big it needs to be, but you could measure it if you want to. And then I'm just going to smooth that back down to make a curve. So I'm just making a curve in the wire and then bringing it back towards the other one. It's hard to show you with that hair in the way. There we go. And then I'm going to wrap that over the opposite arm like that, so that you'll see my wire is still equal lengths because I've been working one side and then the other side. Okay, I'm just fiddling it a little bit to get it in a nice shape. And then I'm just going to give that one more wrap over each side, just to make sure that those wings and the arms are nice and tightly in place. And then bring them back down to the bottom again. When you're working with wire, it's nice to really mould it round with your fingers, because if you just loop it like that, it makes big loops and then it's harder to work with. You just end up with really loopy bits, so I just really work it with my thumbs and fingers. Now I've got these two ends coming down, so I'm going to bring it down for the body by twisting those ends together, just like I did for the arms. I'm just twisting as I go down. And I'm going to work out about the right length for the body. That looks about right. And then I'm going to start on the legs. I'll just do one more. So now it looks like that. Doesn't help that my van's white. Let's put it against my shirt. There we go. It looks like that now. So I've got two wings, two arms and the body, and then the wires are ready to make the legs. So now I'm going to bring it down straight, work out about how long to do the legs, fold it back on itself. If you're putting little bells on or little beads for the feet, then you would put that on before you bend it back round. And then you're going to get the wire. This one's a bit trickier, so I'm going to twist it round like that. So I'm just taking the wire round and round the other piece, but I'm smoothing it down with my fingers and thumb all the time to make sure it sits closely against the wire it's wrapping around and doesn't go too loopy. There we go, there's one leg. Right, now I'm going to do the other one. So I'm going to take it to about the same length, well, not about the same length, but the same length. Wonky legs, there we go. There. And then There we go. So that's about right. So the legs are the same length now, and then I'm going to wrap that around. I just open those up so that I can get the wire around. There. So I've brought that back up, and now I've got 2 legs, 2 arms, 2 wings. And then where those wires now come up, I'm going to wrap those back around the body, going up towards the arms and the wings. I'm controlling that really tight so it wraps tightly against the body. When I get to the top, I'm just going to take that back over the top of the wing, like that. So I've wrapped it over the top of the wing. And then I'm going to do the same with the other side. So I'm going to bring it up the body. Just going to get that one out of the way. Bring it up. And then when it's close enough to the arms, like, it's so hard with that hair in the way. There we go. When it's close enough to the arms and the wing, then I'm going to fold it back over again. So they're both folded over, and then now they're directing back down again. So I'm going to use up this wire that I've got. I could cut it off, but I don't want to, because I've got to build up the body anyway with the fabric, so I might as well use this wire to make the body a bit wider. So I'm taking it back down to the bottom to where the legs start, and the same with the other side. So I'm always working one side and then the other side, keeping it all equal, and then I don't run out of wire on one side. You know, when I'm doing the arms and the legs and things and the wings. Okay, now this side's nearly run out now. This side's got a bit extra on, so I'm going to take that back up again. Like that. There's that last bit. So I've pushed it in as hard as I can with my thumb, but there's still a little bit that I could push in with the pliers. So the same with the other one. There's the 2 legs. I've got a little bit left, so I'm going to push that down, and then I'm just going to get my pliers. You can, as I say, you can use big pliers. You don't have to have jewellery pliers. This is just what I've got to hand, and then I'm just going to use those to just smooth it round and sit against the frame. And the same with the other one. There we go. So now that sits against the framework really neatly, and it's not gonna, because I don't want it to be sharp, especially if I was giving it to a child to decorate. I don't want it to be sharp at all. In fact, when Elfie was really little, I used to wrap some fabric over it first, just to make sure that she wasn't going to catch her fingers on any part of the wire. So I'd just give it a light wrapping with some really fine fabric, and then she could decorate it and wrap the fancy fabrics on top. So that's all the framework together now, and see, the head is still moving around, but that's okay, because when the clothes are put on, that's going to push that back up to the top. If you are worried about your wire work, about whether it's going to hold it in place, mine always hold in place really well, because I'm used to working with it, and when you've got used to it, you get really tight with the wire. But if you are worried about it, you can use a bit of thread and a needle to just stitch your hair together first, if you want to. So, but this will hold together really tight once that fabric's on there. So now the fairy looks like that. And now I'm going to start to wrap the fabrics on. So the first thing I'm going to do is wrap the body. So I've got some scrap fabrics. It doesn't matter what kind of fabrics you use as long as they're not too thick. If the fabric's really thick, you know, this is like quite a thick cotton fabric, but if it's a really thick fabric, it's going to be really hard to wrap it round neatly. So I had some scraps of things like these sparkly fabric, and then some nice kind of net type fabric, not net, but like, you know, like oh, I can't think of the word, like voiles and things like that. I just look out for things in charity shops that are especially if something's ripped as well. Like sometimes in the charity shops they keep a bag out the back of all the stuff that's just not, they don't want to sell it, they don't think it's good enough to sell, and they let me go and have a look what I can recycle that really needs recycling, that can't be reused again and worn again. And this was one, it had a rip in it. So yeah, this was a cushion cover that someone had, and it got torn where the patchwork had started to come apart. So I got given that, and these little bits of beautiful brocade will look really nice on the fairies. Yeah, so I'm going to use this as my wrap for the body. And so what I do is I just get the piece of fabric. This is the sleeve of a dress. So I'm just going to put a little cut in the fabric. It's about 1 inch across, and then I'm just going to tear it down. Not all fabrics will tear like that, but because this is a cotton weave, then it will. I take those threads off, they go back into my spinning box when I'm spinning yarn, and get recycled. So I've got a piece of fabric there. Now what I'm going to do is hold the bead really tight up towards the hair, and I'm going to get the end of the fabric and I'm going to leave a little end like that that's going to get wrapped over. So I'm going to lay that about that much against the side of the fairy. Now I'm going to take the fabric round and I'm going to wrap over that like that. So I'm holding it like that and I'm going to wrap over it. You can stitch it in place if you want to. That'll do the same thing, but it's easy to just wrap right over it. Once that's in place, see, now that's not going anywhere, then I can just start wrapping around. So I don't want to wrap it too thickly around the neck, but I do want to push that bead up to the top. So I'm wrapping right up towards the bead. And now I'm going to come back down and I'm going to wrap over that end that's left sticking out. So I don't want that sticking out of the wings, so I'm going to hold that out of the way. Now when I get to where the wings are, there, I've come underneath the wing and I'm going to wrap back up and over to the opposite side to make a cross, and then I'm bringing that all the way back round across the front. Oh, gone off the camera. Across the front like that, and then I'm bringing it up the back and I'm going in across the other way. I'm just going to show you that. So I brought it across one way, all the way back round the front, and then across the other way. So I just bound it across like that, so that it just wraps over the front of where the wings and the hands are. And if it needs another wrap, then I will. So I can still see the wire work inside where the arms are joined together, so I'm going to put another wrap over that, but I'm running out of fabric, so I'm going to leave that end down so that I can wrap over it. I'm going to start a new one, leave the end of that, and I'm going to wrap straight over the front there, and then I'm coming down the back across the front underneath the arm. Now I'm going up to the other side of the other wing, just trying to get the hair out of the way like that. Now I'm going across the other way like that. Then that's really nicely bound now across the fronts of the wings and the arms, and up towards the head, so I'm really happy with where that is. So now I'm going to start wrapping down the body. So I've got my two ends of the fabric that I want to wrap over, and I'm just going to start wrapping down the body and over those fabrics towards the legs. So I'm just binding it down, doing it nice and firm because I don't want it all loose and coming undone. And then now I'm going to go back up again because I don't want the body to be too thin, because it's going to have a skirt stitched onto it, so I need some thick fabric to be able to stitch the skirt on and hold in place. So come back up to there, and back down. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get a pin, if I've got one. Yep. I get a pin and I'm just going to hold that in place, and I'll stitch that into place when I put the skirt on. So now it looks like that, and oh, that's the front. There we go. It looks like that. So now for the skirt, I just measured. Now I measured this against another doll earlier so that I could have some prepared, and I think the skirt's probably going to be too short for this one. But that's okay because I can do something with that later. So here's one that I made earlier. So I got a piece of fabric, and if I was doing this now, I didn't want to do this on camera because I thought it's going to take too long. So I would measure kind of from the waist. So I look at where I want the skirt to sit, that looks about right, and I would measure for that fabric width to be as long as the legs, unless I've got the little bells and beads on the bottom, in which case I'd probably quite like those to be seen sticking out the bottom. And I don't mind those little legs sticking out, but normally I'd do it just a little bit longer. And then what I've done is I've running stitched along the fabric. So the fabric's, I didn't actually measure it in any length, it was just whatever length I'd got because it was the sleeve of that dress. So I just running stitched along it so that I can pull it like that. I'm going to show you a couple of running stitches just in case you haven't done them before. It's really, really easy to do. So I've doubled my thread in half when I threaded it, and then you can tie some knots in the end to make it hold in place, but I just cast on by stitching over and over the same spot. So you want that to hold in place really well where you start it, and then all you're going to do is go in and out of the fabric. So I don't want to go too near the edge, because if that fabric frays, which this kind will, then all the stitching is going to come out. So I'm just going to leave, I don't know, maybe about a quarter of an inch, something like that, and then I'm just going to go in and out of the fabric with my needle. So it's not a back stitch where you're going back on yourself. I don't want it to hold the stitch in place, I want it to be able to draw along. So I've literally just gone in and out, in and out, in and out, and then I'm pulling that to the end, and then you can just pull that along like that. See, if I'd have stitched over and over, then it wouldn't pull along like that, it would hold in place. So I've done two skirts. I like to do a few layers of skirts because that makes it really puffy, and sometimes I put net skirts as well underneath, which are really nice and fairy like. So I'm just going to space those out. I don't want it pulled right tight like that. I want to space that out just a little bit so it'll go all the way around the body, but I'm just kind of making sure that the pleats are spaced all around so I haven't got a flat part anywhere. So then I get to the back, and then I'm just going to use my needle that's still threaded to just put a couple of stitches in there to hold it in place, and I'll go through the fabric that's underneath as well, you know, what you wrap onto the body. And then I just go round the skirt, just put in a few stitches right through the body, to make sure it's held in all the way around. Then I'm going to take out that pin that I'd held the binding fabric for the top, and then I'm going to use the needle that's already in the right place. I'll just run it up through the fabric to where it needs stitching in place. we go. And I'm just going to put a couple of stitches in there just to secure that one. Like that. Stitch it and then I can cut the thread off. So I've overstitched several times on the same spot just to hold it in place. So now she has one skirt, and I want to give her another skirt. Oh, this is one that Elfie did. She decorated this one. She put the hair on herself, and then I did the wire work. And she decorated this one herself when she was about, I think she was about 3 when she did this one, and she put little trousers on it, and she also drew a little face on it. It's really sweet. So you don't have to do skirts, you could put little trousers on them just by binding down the legs. Okay, so now I'm going to get that second skirt. Working against the sunset, it's going a bit darker. So this one, because I've got the opening at the back of this one, I'm going to make this one close at the front. So I'm going to open up the stitches enough that it reaches all the way around. So I'm starting at the back this time, and I'm going to attach that together at the front. Just get that in place. I would normally take more time over getting it all in place and stuff like that, but just for the video, just to show you. Then I'm going to, where those ends meet together, I'm just going to put a few stitches to hold it in place at the front. And then again, I'm just going to work around the skirt, going through the body of the fairy where that fabric was built up. That's why I want plenty of fabric on the body so that I can actually stitch through it, because if it was just a fine layer of fabric over bare wire, it would be really hard to stitch into. So there, I'm back to the front. And then I'm going to leave that out. I quite like that you can see that skirt underneath there. There she is. So now I'm just going to cast off with a few stitches. So it's just cast off. We just stitch over and over some small stitches on the same spot, and that holds it in place, ready to cut it. Okay, so that's the main part of the fairy. To make a little hanging thread, I'll just tie some fine thread around the neck, and then I can like tie it and then put a knot with a loop, and then I'll just bring that up through the hair so that you can hang her up. So for decoration, you could put even more skirts, you know, just do the skirts until it looks about right. And sometimes I put just a thin bit of netty over skirt, which looks really nice and fairy like. So on this one you can see the belt over the skirt there, so I would just get some nice I've got some nice yarn there, so I would just like doing the body, I'll just try and find the ends. Oh, actually I'll use this. So this is a thicker yarn so you can see better. So I'll just get that and wrap it over where I've done that stitching. This also helps to keep it in place more if you need it. So there, I've just bound around the top of the skirt there. And then you could add things like got little beads, little glass beads. By the way, the head, I don't think I said at the start, the head, I find necklaces in charity shops with the nice big ball beads on. So these big ones are what I would use with thicker, heavier wire, as long as the hole is big enough for it to go through. And then some of them are smaller. So I've got different sizes for different size bodies. Yeah, so I just break up the necklaces. I have got one here that hasn't been broken up yet. So it was just a string of beads. This is exactly how it came out of the charity shop. It was just a string of beads that was hanging in there. I think it was 50p or something like that. And then I just cut that and take the beads off to use for fairy heads. And then the things that I've got for decoration, you can use anything. Broken jewellery is really nice to use, seashells, all kinds of bits and bobs. I've got these really nice little buttons that I kept off things that were ripped that I'd recycled the fabric for. So you could use a little button on the front, or you could even put a little button on a hair, which is really nice. And another thing I really like to do is I like to get, oh, where are they? Like little, yeah, the little silk flowers like I showed you at the beginning. This one's a bit big, might look quite nice, so like a little hat. And then you can, yeah, that does look quite cool. And then stitch that on there. So I've took off the tough plastic bit, and that's just the fabricy bit of the flower. Again, sometimes you see those in charity shops. And I've got some sparkly threads. I think this is the one that my mum gave me, a little star, so that would be really nice stitched on. So I just keep lots of little bits and bobs, like these little pom-poms are quite cute. Oh, my mum gave me these as well, tiny little buttons. I think she got these from a quilting shop. And then you could put little tiny buttons on their outfits and things like that. I also really love, I don't know if you can see that in there, there's a little heart button. Can you see that little red heart? I really love to stitch a little heart button on the heart. I think it looks really cute. And then these are some sequins. I got these in a charity shop in Tintagel. Really nice charity shop, and they had big bags of sequins that somebody given away, so I got those for Elfie, but I use them as well sometimes because there's millions in there. So I just look out for things like that in charity shops that I can use. And then I have little tiny fine beads. I don't know if you can see those in there, really teeny tiny beads, and you could spend ages just stitching all little, you know, or embroidering little things onto them. You can really go for it with all the decoration. And also sometimes, like, I'll put a little necklace on, or I might paint a little bindi on, or put some glitter on, or little sparkles. And this is where I would then get, if I wanted to put plastic in the wings or cellophane or something like that, you can just cut out a piece that's bigger than the wing, just put a little line of glue around the edge, something that's strong enough to hold it. So I don't think Pritt stick would work or anything like that, but something like, you know, like a PVA glue or something like that might work if it's a nice thick one. And then just put that around the edge of the wing, and then you just lay the plastic over it, but you'd have to make sure it's stretched out nice and firm, and then you can trim it off afterwards when it's dried, as close as you can to the wire without it coming off. Yeah, I've done that before, but I usually just leave them plain. I quite like them just as wire. But you could even like stitch in between, or yeah, you could do lots of things with that, like a little dream catcher inside it, things like that. If you can't get hold of beads that are like balls, I guess you could do something with buttons. I've got some big buttons. You'd have to do something to make the hair come upwards. I haven't really thought about that, but there's some way that you could do that with buttons. But even better, you could just cut some more rags from the fabrics that you've got, and then just tighten them, like wrap them into a tight ball, and use some cotton thread and wrap around until it makes a ball. And if you haven't got yarn for hair, you can also tear thin strips. In fact, one of these has got some in. There is some torn fabric in the hair, so you could make the whole of the hair out of torn fabric. So basically all you would need then is literally just some fabric to recycle and some wire, and then you could make the heads out of torn fabric, you could make the hair out of torn fabric, and then make all the clothes out of torn fabric. So you don't need a lot of stuff to make them. Just thinking if there's anything else I need to say about the fairies. I don't think there is. No, I think that's it. So I hope you enjoy making yourself a fairy or making one for someone else. Yeah, as I say again, if you're watching on Instagram or any other places that I might have put this, my YouTube channel is Leah Wild Creative, so that's Lea Wild Creative, and yeah, it'll be on there. So hope you enjoy it.